Ideas that have been generated in the last 16 sessions with policy and instruments to enable the work that we want to do. And then we have a final closing session, icing on the cake, for GLF Nairobi. As Ruth said, my name is Tony Simons. I'm the Director General of the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF, one of the GLF partners. And many people know Directors Generals as those people who exaggerate. But I tell you, it's no exaggeration that we have a brilliant and fantastic policy panel for you here today. No exaggeration at all. And the 300 or 400 people in the room here will pay testimony to that. And probably the 10 million people online who are viewing this will enjoy it as well. Our first speaker is going to be the Honourable Minister from Ethiopia for Natural Resources and Environment, His Excellency Kebede Daud. And our second speaker is going to be Vorigana Sek from Senegal, who will be speaking in French. So please get yourself attuned to the earpieces. It'll be on channel 2. We have simultaneous translation. That one will be in French. Channel 1 is English, channel 2 is French, and channel 3 is common sense. So we're here this evening now to talk about policy and how it affects all of the landscape management and landscape stewardship issues that we are interested in. And why in Africa? Well, Africa is the second most populous country. It is the country with the largest amount of free arable land. It is the youngest continent, but is also the poorest and the one with the least agricultural production. Across the different countries of Africa, between 2% and 30% of the land is privately owned. So it differs tremendously by country. And it's great that we have the richness here today spanning the continent to give us perspectives from Ethiopia, Senegal, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. We have private sector, we have policy groups, we have a minister, and we have a fantastic head of a council, Economic, Environment and Social Council in Senegal, that advises the ministry. So I'm sure no one will leave disappointed from this session. So I would like to invite our first speaker, His Excellency Kebede Daud, the Minister for Environment and Conservation of Ethiopia. Please, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Simon. Honor and privilege to be here. My name is Kebede. I am from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Ethiopia Federal Democratic Government. As many of you know, Africa is the second most populous nation in the globe, in the world. Ethiopia is also second most populous nation in Africa. We are agrarian. And Ethiopia is mainly characterized by rugged topography, very steep slope. As of today, more than 18 million people living in the rural areas. Imagine how these very big agrarian communities coupled with traditional farming system can create very big pressure on our natural resource, on our land. Moreover, Ethiopia has been affected by increasing frequency and intensity of drought and floods. That has affected livelihood and the environment. Ethiopia has been suffering from poor productivity of degraded landscape. Therefore, Ethiopia has been seriously considering the impact of land degradation and hence have been devising various policy measures to tackle this challenge. As part of the This effort, environmental policy, was designed to ensure sustainable development through sound management of natural and man-made resources. Further, Rural Land Administration and Use Proclamation was enacted to secure the use rights through certification schemes. This is because tenure insecurity was perceived as an obstacle for investment on land. Land restoration is strongly linked to tenure security. Thus, certifying the land, Ethiopia government has certified a land for individuals, for communities, even for state-owned lands. Our land law is gender sensitive, certifying both wife and husband together. I heard in the previous plenary that in sub-Saharan Africa, a girl is not eligible to get a land from her parents. This is quite different in Ethiopia. Both girl and boy are eligible to get a land from their parents. This is very important for land restoration. A man is not supposed to take land certificate without his wife's picture, even full name of his wife, and her picture should be put in the certificate. If you want even to transfer for the second party, he has no right to transfer without the consent of his wife. This creates very strong social bondage. Even it reduces, nowadays, the rate of divorce is becoming reducing. This is a very important step that the Ethiopian government has taken on the land. This is a very important step for the restoration, land restoration program. The new forest development and conservation and utilization proclamation is also encourage public-private investment and puts in place various incentives to attract the private sector to invest in the forest sector. The proclamation encourage private sectors to invest on the land. The private sectors has a right to get a land without a lease. They are exempted from the tax until the maturity of the forest. There is access to credit. So these all policies help us to invest on the land. Having saying this, there is a limitation, of course, like lack of clear benefit sharing mechanism and cost benefit sharing between upstream and downstream communities. This needs thorough regulatory mechanism. We are working on it. We have the proclamation for benefit sharing, but it needs regulation and guidelines. We are working on that, and also we are drafting forest fund to support forest landscape restoration. With time, let me stop here. If I get a time, I will come back for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For those who haven't been to Ethiopia to see the fantastic landscape restoration experiences, it's truly remarkable. These are where the financial investments and the leveraging of the natural capital is all enabled by social capital. National policy level, that 20 days by each adult in a village is spent on looking after the watersheds, and some local bylaws even stretch that to 40 days. Truly leading and remarkable. Thank you very much. To our second panelist, Madame Vorigana Sek. She heads the Economic, Environmental and Social Council of Senegal. This is a group of 120 parliamentarian-like individuals that advise the minister on issues to do with environment, social and economic issues. And land management is one of their key priorities. So please switch to the French channel if you don't understand, because Madame Sec is going to address us in French. Thank you.
Okay, merci.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. I am a member of the Economic, Social and Environmental Council, but my main work on a daily basis is to manage an NGO, which is Green Senegal, which I founded. And that is my work as an environmentalist, which has brought me to the Economic, Social, Environmental Council in Senegal. I've been working for more than 30 years in the development relating to the environment. At the beginning, in the 1990s, it was quite rare to have a woman be so included and involved in the environment, but that is my background, agriculture and environment. And over several years in Senegal, we have worked on this field because Senegal is a small country, 196 square acres, 14 million inhabitants. It's quite a poor country, which depends on rainfall and on agriculture, where 60% of the population is involved in agriculture and also in fisheries. 7,000 kilometers of coast, and we have a great deal invested in soil erosion, in coastal erosion, and salination of our land. The latest census showed that we have 1,700,000 hectares that have been degraded by soil salination, and this means it's very difficult to have productive agricultural soil because, as I just stated, Senegal is an agricultural country and it is the women who work the most in this area. So we need to build capacity for the rural populations through trainings, through research. We need strong partnerships and institutions which are strong so that we're able to build capacity of those who are working at grassroots level and to push our governments to accept some new initiatives, some new policies. For example, the issues relating to the coast, the questions relating to the climate, to agriculture, to water management. These are essential issues for the development of our communities. And over the last few years, with the issue of the Paris Accord and climate change, there is so much that is coming up because we can see that it's possible to work together, that our countries can all work together. We should not divide ourselves and be small units. We need to work as West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, and have links across these countries. And we should also seek to find out how we can set up appropriate infrastructure so that these countries are able to have regional integration. Why shouldn't Senegal be able to sell its fish, for example, to Mali and rice from Mali to Senegal? Why do we have to take our Senegalese rice? We consume rice ourselves greatly, and yet we don't produce it because that was perhaps the policies from colonization which meant that Senegal ceased its way of feeding itself. Millet it was at the time, and now we have rice from Vietnam because that was also a French colony. And now we are non-producers of rice and we import our rice from elsewhere. But thanks to our advocacy and our lobbying and civil society, we have made it possible for Senegalese to change. So we've been able to invest in irrigation, in agricultural research, in the recovery of our environment. And so what can we do to make changes at policy level? We try to build capacity amongst people, to empower women, to make sure that women are much stronger so that they can have access to decision making, so that they should become parliamentarians, mayors, so that they are in a position to make change. We would have, therefore, development that would be much better for our women, for our children, because we are women in Senegal and in other Western African countries and in other countries. We see that our children are migrating, that they are leaving because there's no hope back home. Why, therefore, shouldn't we invest in our own countries so that our children can stay back home? And they only leave because of this lack of hope, this lack of vision of our policies. And that is why we must make sure that we develop our own countries, because no one else is going to do that for us. And as we lobby with our young people, it is so that we can stay on our continent, work in our continent. Last year in Bonn, you launched a movement, but there are thousands of these movements. And even here in this country where we are, the first woman who set up the Green Belt movement was Professor Wangari Maathai. And we are all learning from her. And we're all saying that what she did to achieve the Nobel Prize, we should be able to do it ourselves. Perhaps we won't receive the Nobel Prize, but we can have smaller prizes. And we have received smaller prizes. The UNDP might give such prizes. It could be UNEP. It could be UNDP in Ethiopia. It could be Burkina Faso, the Burkinabe, who was able to stop desertification. It could be no matter who amongst us. I'm not sure of your name, but the lady who said, I will change things. I'm an environmentalist and I will use wood to make furniture for children. Or I'm an environmentalist and I have looked into the matter of salinization, because salination will mean that we cannot use that land. And there's the Biosaline Agriculture Organization. What are the different varieties, the different species that we should use on saline soil to rehabilitate it? It's for sure our coast is being eroded and we cannot just give up. We must make sure that our land is able to produce either wood or produce or so that we're able to have our prawns available. Just give me another minute, please. My idea currently, and I've been working 30 years on the ground, it's my work that brought me to the council. And now I would say perhaps I walk a little more slowly, but my head is still functioning very well, and I'm still young and active in my head. It is perhaps our limbs that get older, and we're not able to run so easily. But my idea is to create an institute where we will be partners, where we can work together, an institute which would work on sustainable development above all, issues relating to water, biodiversity, agriculture, energy, issues relating to property, to pollution, to salination. And these are the concepts in which we need to work. And there's no reason that we should go from our country and say that this country is not able to deal with its problems. When we look at Russia, the matches, Senegalese went and cleaned the tribunes after the stadia after the matches. But in our country, we must also make sure that we clean our houses so that they're as clean as they are in Rwanda, everywhere. Thank you.
Wow. Madam Sek, thank you very much for your elegant speaking, your thinking, and the passion that you're bringing to these issues. Although I'm not a woman, I am wise enough to know not to interrupt a woman mid-sentence. And we gave you slightly longer in the program, and I thank our male colleagues, because this had intended to be a gender balance panel. Unfortunately, Her Excellency Francine Tumishimi from Rwanda could not join us. She was called back to Rwanda. So it wasn't the intention that we didn't have a gender balance panel, but I think that Madam Sek has certainly made up for the balance with not only the length of her speech, but So thank you, Madam Sek, and thank you for the indulgence of our male colleagues. And I will strictly keep you to 5 minutes, sadly, for each of you. So we come to our third speaker, who's the Chief Executive Officer of FANAPAN. FANAPAN is a policy group that likes to look at evidence-based research to inform policy. I think it has 22 countries across Africa. It started in Southern Africa, yes, but it's moved to East, Central, and West Africa. And a very dynamic program focusing on two things: nutrition-sensitive agriculture and climate-smart agriculture, and the policy levers that can help countries, communities, sub-regions, and the private sector connect with those. So it's a delight to have Munhamo Chizvio, for the Chief Executive Officer, and you have 5 minutes to share with us some of your thoughts.
Thank you. As I came here, I reflected on our experience as a policy analysis network, which is supporting governments to use evidence for policy formulation. And I came up with 4 themes that I would like to share with you. I'm calling these the 4 tensions that are contributing to the situation we are seeing on the ground. The first tension is between short-term livelihood needs that communities that are dependent on forests have, which are immediate. They have an immediate livelihood need, an immediate food security need, an immediate income need, and they are desperate. And forest resources are the source of last resort. And this tension is with the long-term environmental benefits, often not so well quantified. Often the forests are undervalued, the water resources are underpriced, and it's very difficult to resolve this tension. The second tension is between the public goods and the private benefits. When you restore the forests upstream, the benefits often occur more to the downstream users who have nothing to do with the forests upstream. They don't own that land, they don't know where it is, they don't know where the catchment area is, and their downstream irrigators. That tension between public goods, you rehabilitate the forest, but someone else benefits, and that's a tension. So reconciling who should fund the public good and who should get the private benefit is a big issue. The third tension is between indigenous communities that have lived on this land, that are part and parcel of the livelihood and the type of life in those forests, and what I might call invasive species or people from elsewhere who want also to preserve these game parks for tourism or other exploitation. And then the last tension is between environmental objectives, which are often intangible, and economic benefits that come, for example, from agriculture, which are very visible when you see a crop and you can harvest it and you can sell and you can realize a benefit. Now, the policies that I've seen in the region that are really working, that's the question, that have a breakthrough, are trying to deal with these 4 conflicts or 4 tensions. And the first type of policies are those that are providing incentives to communities to provide short-term relief whilst giving time for the forests to rejuvenate and recover. The second type of policies that are successful in the region are those that are involving everybody in government, multi-sectoral approach, as we heard from the minister from Rwanda yesterday. That when government works with one voice and speaks about the importance of forests, and everybody rallies behind that voice, then success is more likely to come. I've also seen that policies that try to innovate in terms of policing, involving, for example, community policing mechanisms, are much more successful because of local ownership and more effective control and management. I've also seen that the policies that are scaling up adoption of alternative renewable energy sources to deal with demand, the demand for the commodity in the forests, are also much more likely to succeed. And finally, I've seen that the enactment of various laws, especially customary land rights laws for indigenous peoples, and embedding them in the constitution of the country, you are likely to have much more success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Munhamo. A great tour of the continents and the policies that affect us. I think particularly linking the public goods with private interests was particularly poignant. So we come to our fourth panelist, and our fourth panelist is Steve Insita from Uganda, who is working for a private company, Havila. However, he is connected to national policies to try and make policies enabling for the private sector to do with landscape issues, particularly in Uganda. Steve, you have 5 minutes to share some thoughts with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. When we deal with the subject of landscape forest restoration, we are dealing with mainly, I think, natural forests, because you restore something that has been there, but it had been degraded. And natural forests in Uganda are either owned by the state, and those are the very big ones. They are either in forest reserves or in the national parks. But also there are those which are owned by the private individuals. Now, one of the key policy, or let's say legal breakthroughs that came with the forest tenure reform, there was a forest tenure reform in Uganda which was codified in the National Forest and Tree Planting Act of 2003. But what that act did was to give the full band of rights, ownership, management, use, transferring those rights to private landowners who have forests on their lands. So they own them fully, fully they own them, they can use them, they can do things. Now, when it comes to natural forests, which are owned by these private landowners, they are mostly small-scale landholders. Maybe the forests are even 1 hectare, maybe going to a couple of 100 hectares. And when this reform came, these forests were already degraded. So these private forest owners really did not see much benefit in trying to restore these private forests, because they had competing interests. Do I invest in maize, or do I invest my money in restoring something that will give me money in 25, 30, 50 years? So that's where the problem came. Otherwise, the reforms were good. And as a result, we didn't see much restoration going on. In fact, there was continued degradation of these little forests outside of the government-held lands. But the other beautiful thing that came with it was the expansion of the private sector into commercial plantations. And we are talking commercial here, the big and the small. In fact, in Uganda, the small private plantation owners are the biggest in number. But this, you can ask yourself, is that restoration, or it is just planting? Because these plantations are established outside of natural forests, where there are grasslands, where the forest has never been. Now, these private forests came as what we called compensatory timber plantations. Because natural forests were being taken out of production of timber, nature reserves being established, so we needed timber to actually replace this. So in effect, when these timber plantations have grown, they are going to have a very good impact on the conservation of these natural forests. Now, one of the things that really is a bit of a problem, as I said, is to make this restoration by small private forest owners profitable, and profitable financially. We can look forward to 25 years' time, but the way these people look at it is, I need money now to take my children to school, so I need to make money. Now, one of the things that could happen, and which happened with the private timber plantations, is what I would call, or what we would call, a startup, provision of startup capital. Yeah, getting ready. So this startup capital really worked with the private plantations in a private-public partnership mode. You know, the public funds were used to help these people to start off, together with their own funds, and after that, then they can continue. That kind of model could easily be used actually in restoration of private natural forests. I think I've run out of time. I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Steve, and sorry to rush you along, but I'd like to ask a couple of questions to the panel, and then we're going to, if we have a few moments left, go to the audience for some questions. The first one I perhaps could address to His Excellency. In Ethiopia, how can we better align global, national, and local policies and bylaws, as well as personal choices for better land stewardship and landscape investments?
As you know, Ethiopia has very big pledge, both for Bond Challenge, New York Declaration on Forest, and FR 100. About 22 million hectares to be restored. It is bigger than many African countries. However, Ethiopia can deserve this. What we did, we have aligned those pledges with our national plan and endorsed by the parliament. Once endorsed by the parliament, it is a law. It must be implemented. And each region has taken their share. Ethiopia is a federal state, about 9 regional states and 2 city administrations. So all regional states has taken their part from the national plan. Accordingly, all districts have taken their parts. And then all Kabbales. Kabbale is the last administration unit. And at all levels, this plan endorsed by their respective council and parliament. And it is evaluated every quarter. Reports are supposed to be submitted every quarter and evaluated. So from the lower administration unit, from the Kabale farmers, they are organized at their village. They are organized, a maximum 30 farmers are organized together, a minimum 5-6 farmers are organized. So they have their own plan. And they are responsible for that to implement. This is the way how we align the pledge with the national plan and even to individual farmers. Thank you.
Okay, very quickly, Madame Sec. Très vite, s'il vous plaît. What advice would you have for other stakeholders of how to best engage with policymakers? Policymakers have a very short amount of time, a lot of responsibility. What advice would you give for people who are trying to influence them and engage with them? What are the secrets that you've learned?
We have to continue to do advocacy, we have to continue talking, and we have to continue showing to the politicians that in our countries they don't take the right decisions, and you must not fear to do so. I met the president of Senegal at the 21 Cup. I told the president that we can't really sign or enact legislation when the decree of implementation is not there. I think, you followed what happened some time ago. This is why people sometimes retire.
Is what the president of the minister of France said to Macron. He doesn't want to lie to himself.
Because we have signed the Paris Accord, but what they wanted to have, it didn't obtain, so they prefer to resign. But do our ministers in Africa resign? Because they no longer want to lie to themselves. We want ministers who say to themselves that I don't want to lie to myself. So the moderator asked me to be brief, and here I am. I have been brief.
Great. We'd like to perhaps just take one question from the audience, so at least we can say we have some participation, and it's, with an audience of 400 people, it's very hard to choose one person. And because I've always wanted to do this, the person who catches the ball gets to answer the question.
Yes, okay, go ahead.
Madame, and your question is?
My name is Dorothy Gidai. I work with women and youth entrepreneurs and children with nature, just creating awareness on climate change. My question is actually around the Blue Economic Conference. And it's basically to say, as Kenyans, we're really excited that there's going to be participation from around the world on this conference. And to Ambassador Durango, I would like to find out how the children and youth are getting involved in it, because we really want to be part of it. So this is a question.
Thank you very much for your question. So I'd ask each of the panel members to address, give us your single, very, very short 10-second closing statement and answer the question as well. And I apologize for the shortness of our panel, but I'm told that Theresa May would like to join us for the concert, and it can't start until we've finished. Let's start at the end. His Excellency Kebede, your closing.
Thank you, Simon. I think I want to say Africa is a big continent. Restoration is not an easy task. And I would like to have a platform, a stronger and continuous regional and sub-regional experience sharing platform. And now it is not a time to talk about the political will commitment. It is a time of action. I would like the engagement of the academia, research, private sector. The people want technical support, technological support, and financial support. And I would like to call upon donors to support the landscape restoration, the survival of united, not the survival of fittest. I thank you.
Well said, Your Excellency. Steve?
Yes. As I said about small holders, but now I will say something about the state in my ending to say that state forests, natural forests are also degraded and need restoration. And in order for the private sector to begin to get interested, we need policies and laws that will give them long-term tenure, because they've got to restore and then begin to make some money. For now, they are going to spend, but they need a long time to get some money back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much. Munhamo, closing thoughts and answer our guest question.
I really think that we can do more with agriculture. And my argument is that agriculture is where the land has been lost to. The forests have been lost to agriculture. So the question is, how can we work with agriculture innovatively to restore? And I'd like to say also, agriculture has the resources. The money is already in agriculture. The people are already in agriculture. Agriculture employs the biggest proportion of the labor force in any country. And I also want to say the largest share of frontline extension workers is actually in agriculture. So I believe that strongly that as we tackle food and nutrition security through agriculture, we should be able to use that momentum in agriculture to address other issues more directly. Thank you.
And Madam Sek, we give you the last word.
If we wish, we can do it. And we must not despair, because in land degradation, if we do despair, it means that our people are going to move and go to Indonesia or to Paris or elsewhere. But we want them to stay here in Africa, because it is here, it is our land, it is our home. So let us learn to be more committed, and let us be more hopeful in order to achieve what we want to obtain. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panel. And as we transition to the closing plenary, I'd like to ask everyone to show a warm round of appreciation to our fantastic panel.